Hello there everybody, how's it going? It's Jessie from Jessie Marita Stuff here on FlossTube. I'm coming to you on this Wednesday, April 22nd, 2020 with my next update video. All within the time frame that I alluded to in my last update, so pat on the back for that. I'm gonna get another pat on the back though because this is attempt number 2. Attempt number 1, iMovie quit unexpectedly. So I get another pat on the back because I decided to turn off my laptop, turn it back on, and start over. So, perseverance. Yeah, today's been one of those days, but we are gonna make some lemonade out of these lemons. Today is like my best day for filming. Tomorrow the weather is supposed to turn. It's not supposed to be so beautiful and sunny tomorrow, so there's that. And then Friday is the marathon. Looking at the forecast, it looks like my next available day to film would be about this time next week, and that's not going to work. I would like to film this time next week, but in addition to today. So here we are. We're just gonna roll with the punches, and I'm gonna start over here at about 10 minutes to 3 in the afternoon. Like I said, though, the weather is beautiful outside, so we've got time. So welcome. If you are a new viewer, thank you so much for coming to check me out. I hope that you find something that you like here. On this channel, I tend to talk about cross-stitch mostly, but I will talk about some books, as is the case today. And I'll also talk about knitting if I've done any. And at this point, I have barely done any. So I won't be talking about any yarn things today. But we've got stitching and we've got books today. So there is that. And so yeah, I hope that you like. If you're a returning viewer, then thank you so much for coming back. You all know what this is. You know what to expect. And y'all are the reason that I do this. So yeah, thank you. What other preamble-y things do I have to talk about before I start showing some things? Oh, new backdrop. Well, a little bit modified backdrop. We'll go with that. Right there is a dove that I stitched 4 years ago. I think tomorrow is the 4-year anniversary of Prince's passing, and I stitched that as an homage. So it's a purple dove. And then the verse underneath is from Purple Rain. It's from the song Purple Rain. So I just thought that I would have that up. Pretty timely. And then next to it are some birthday flowers. Birthday week flowers. How cool is that? My husband does not flowers, y'all. He really doesn't. And these were a total surprise. Like, I didn't ask for them. I didn't say, hey, you should pick up some flowers. No, he did this all on his own. I am so grateful. They're gorgeous. And so I just wanted to be sure to have them up today. So that about does it for preamble. Let's start talking about some projects. I have 5 of them to show you, and we're going to start with a big finish. I did it again. I finished my oldest WIP. So after finishing Rose Fairy, my next oldest WIP was Under the Moonlight by Passione Ricamo, and it's now finished. You will have probably seen this. I posted it all over social media on various Facebook groups as well as on Instagram, but just in case, this is the only place you see me, and because I'm going to show her one more time before she goes into the under the bed box for the rest of her days probably. Here is my big old mermaid. Just going to let her sit there for a second, and then I'll start talking about some things. Oh, she's gorgeous. She's gorgeous. I can barely see through this fabric currently, but I've been staring at her a few times over the last few days. Just super excited about the finish. She is done on a 28 count cachel linen in Lady of the Lake by Under the Sea Fabrics. This is a fat half of fabric. She is too big for a fat quarter, even on 32 count. She's just a little too tall and a little too wide for a fat quarter. So she had to go in a fat half. There's a ton of margin. But that's all right. Better that than not fitting. I started her along with the mystery style. She was a mystery, and it began early November 2014. So yeah, quite a while back. And I've said it a few times over the last couple of years. I kept up with this. I did a really good job of keeping up with this. And when the parts were released, even when Laura released several parts at once, I was good to go. I was able to keep up until I got to her torso. And because I'm a glutton for punishment, the largest mermaid that I will probably ever stitch, I did scandal number 1. And that took up, the majority of the time. To be honest, the majority of the last 5.5 years was just inactivity. I wasn't working on her consistently at all. I think I combined like 3 days over 2017, 2018, and 2019. So yeah, like no wonder she took that long, because I barely worked on her. But it was really the stumbling block her skin was. But it's done now, along with everything else. And as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago when I got that skin finished, it was like seriously the last hurdle before racing to the finish. I didn't really plan on finishing her so early this month. It just kind of worked out that way. Usually if I get close enough to the finish, then I just try to bust it out, because that finish line is feverish. So let's talk about some things that I've changed. I changed the border up big time. In case you're new, it calls for a line of beads. Just beads on beads on beads on beads on beads, all the way across, both outside and inside, all the way around. I think it worked out to like 1,100 more beads than I did for the border. No, I wasn't feeling like doing that. I didn't think that it added all that much to the overall design. So I skipped that and I changed it. I originally tried to just do those inner motifs, the gold with the beads sort of weaving through, but it looked empty and unfinished, and so I had to do something. So I'm going to bring this in close. What I did was, so the back stitch line is in Petite Silk Lame braid, SP, I don't remember, I'll put it down here, what the item number is, but it's the white. It's the same that I used in Fireworks on the 4th. So that's back stitched. And then when you come to the bead detail, it's a stitch. So across using that Petite Treasure braid, or Petite Silk Lame braid, excuse me, one of the white beads, a silver bugle bead that I had hanging around in stash, probably from Persephone, I think. And then another white bead and another stitch before going back into the back stitch. So it's just a simple little bead detail to add something to that without being overwhelming. I'm not obsessed with it. A part of me feels like maybe the bead detail should have gone in between the motifs rather than like sort of bookending them. But I mean, hindsight is 20/20, and I was not going through too many changes to try to make that perfect. It's a border on a project that I'm probably never going to fully finish. So I did change that, and that cut my number of beads down to a total of 1,694. I posted on Instagram stories on the day that I started really beading in earnest. I said, place your bets, people. If anybody gets the exact number of beads, then I was going to send a gift card. I didn't say this in the post, but I was like, if anybody gets within like 2 or 3, then I would be willing to, and nobody did. Nobody got within 3. So just a fun thing to interact with you guys. Some of the guesses were truly interesting. 120, 7,500. Yeah, some pretty interesting guess. But anyway, that was a lot of fun. Okay, so that's the border, and everything else about the border is as charted. The gold work and the beads in the corners, that's all is charted. Okay, so there are some things about this design that are not my favorite, and if I was starting this now, I might have changed. For instance, there's a ton of empty space. There is so much empty space. My entire hand here there's nothing going on there. And the same is true down here. So really, I would have shrunk this down a little bit, brought the moon just a little bit closer to her so that she still looks like she's looking up to it, and it's small enough that it would be at a distance. It's not like it's right here in her face, but not so much empty, unused space. I contemplated carrying the stars because if y'all can see those gold stars there, they're done in Petite Treasure braid in a Smyrna cross. I contemplated carrying those across and maybe trying to organize them into a constellation, but that was more brain than I really felt like putting into this. And so I just left it. I did add a few more stars because it only called for like 7. And so I put in a few extras. The primary purpose for that, though, I will admit, is that right here, next to the moon, is a huge ugly dye spot, like where a spot of dye landed or broke or something right there, and it's like this bright blue spot. And that wasn't looking so good, so I covered it over with one of those stars just to try to hide that a little bit, and I think it does that. If I had been the stitcher that I am now, I would have just shifted the moon over to cover that. But when I started this piece, I had only been stitching for a little over a year. So I didn't know. I didn't realize. I don't know. I expected there to be something else that was going to go there to cover it, or I was too afraid of shifting anything. I don't know. Regardless, I had to cover that spot somehow. There's another one of those dye spots down here, but it's much smaller. There's a little one right there. You see that? So not a big deal. Easily handled there. So that is that. And then I did her skin over one, like I said. I love her expression. Passione Ricamo faces are really, really gentle and really appealing and just pretty. Her expression is very, it's just fitting for this piece. And I love how striking her eyebrow is. Like, that thing had to be drawn on, but she lives in saltwater, so that's maybe it's tattooed on, maybe something like that. She's clearly not opposed to tattoos because she's got them. Anyway. Yeah, I love her face. Her face turned out really gorgeous. Let's see, what other things did I want to tell you guys about? So this design calls for nearly 3,000 beads in 2 colors. 2 colors. And once again, if I was a more experienced stitcher when I started this, I would have tried to vary up the beads a little bit. I think I would have introduced some new colors. It's the plain old boring white pearl beads, and then I'll bring it in a little close here so that y'all can see those purple beads. But those purple beads even are kind of lackluster. Like, I don't know. They're okay. They get a little blended in with my fabric because my fabric is kind of that somewhere in between blue and purple color. If it were me, I would have added in like some blue, some like deep cobalt blue. Especially these beads around her tail, because her tail is purple, and so these beads all but disappear down there. And there's even a long stretch of beads that just kind of ends here, which you can hardly see unless I point them out. So yeah, I would have done something different with the beads, but it's okay. By the time I was reaching the point where I could have changed things, I was over it and just ready to be done. Plus, I had the beads. Like, just use up what I've got, right? And then one of the other changes I made is in her tail, in the top part of her tail. So where her thighs would be, were she human. It calls for some of this purple metallic backstitch to look like scales. But it doesn't call for this much. She wanted you to backstitch this like rose detail, like elaborate roses in gold backstitch, like basically from her butt to her knees. And I thought that looked garish and gaudy and just a little too extra. And I wasn't a huge fan of the way that looked on the finished ones. I saw some other people just omitted the backstitch on this section entirely, and I really liked that. Her tail is sparkly enough on its own. There's Krynic and Petite Treasure braid in there, both in blends as well as on its own. So it's sparkly and beautiful enough without roses. Didn't make any sense. So I skipped that entirely. I did decide to do the scales because I kind of liked the way that looked, but it was only charted for like this section here. So I just carried that sort of concept up. So just the tops of her thighs, or what would be her thighs, have that scaly appearance. And I think that turned out pretty good. Yeah. It was like this haphazard, like random lines. And so I just kept that up for the entire length of that section. And then I will bring in closer the water. I'm not going to bring this in too close because my stitches got smushed over the last few years, and so some of my stitches look really awful. I'm going to need to hit this with an iron to try to, I don't know, bring some of them back to life if I can. So you guys hear me say that I'm going to put this in the under the bed box and probably never bring it out again. But I'm also talking about ironing the stitches so that they fluff up. What's the point? Because I'm not totally sold on the idea of never fully finishing her. I'm just never going to frame her. She's too big for that. And my framing dollars can go to some other things that I really would like to have on my walls. And she's just not something that I'm going to have displayed on my walls. But I think that if I ever learn how to sew, and in order to do that, I need to probably break out my sewing machine that I got for Christmas. I think that she would do as a like a wall hanging. If I could sew her up in a wall hanging, that might be something. And she can go perhaps in my library or something. So no framing dollars, but some finishing, because she's big and maybe deserving of a little something, right? Anyway, so there she is in entirety. I estimate that she took 70 days. I have no idea how accurate that is, but if I had a guess, it's somewhere around 70 total days. And I think 13 of which were here in 2020. Some of that was only in 30-minute segments, so take with that what you will. So there she is. There's my Under the Moonlight. All finished. And this is my last of my 2014 WIPs. With that being my last 2014 WIP, I'm sure that you guys' next question is going to be, well, Jess, what's your oldest WIP now? And that would be In This Moment. Yeah. However, HAEDs don't count, apparently, when you're talking about oldest WIPs. So I guess then unofficially Not Quite White Work would be my next oldest WIP. And that's not going to be finished anytime soon. So I've got 2 megabaps coming up next. So this is probably going to be, it's probably going to be a while before I get another oldest WIP finish. At least next year, if not later. So anyway, it was cool to get her finished. It was cool to knock out my 2014 WIPs within the first half of this year. I can't believe that it took me this long to get them both done. And now here we are in the first third of the year, and they're both done. That's That's too cool. So anyway, that I finished up on Sunday, but there are some other things that I have worked on since my last update. So let's keep going and start talking about some of those. And my last update came just before Dark 13 stitching, so just before the 13th of the month. And I had it in the plans to work on Halloween at Hawk Run Hollow by Carriage House Samplings. And I did. I think I worked on this for 2 days, if my memory serves. It was meeting a couple of prompts, and so I had to put in, I think, like 1,000 stitches or something. So it took a couple days. This is being done on a 40 count Newcastle linen in Country Mocha from Zweigart. So it's one of those printed ones with the modeling on the front and it's blank on the back. And so I will show you the whole thing for just a second, and then I will bring it in close because you guessed it, I'm still working on the Mermaid block. While I was working on this, I had grand illusions that I was going to work on it until the block was finished. And right about the moment that I thought that, I was bored and I wanted to switch. So bring it in a little bit closer so that y'all can see. What I focused on this time was basically the water around the orange coral, including the orange coral itself. I needed orange stitches, so that was really the impetus for that. And then I got some more water. I stitched up the necklaces. Not going to bring it in too close on this one. The chain on this necklace is done in French knots, and they're terrible. My French knots look so bad. I don't know if it's 40 count or if it was impatience or what, but they do not look good. So I'm not going to bring that in close. I'm also not going to take them out. It's going to be my wonky necklace. Yeah. So anyway, so there's that. So then I did some more of the water, and although he's hard to see, I did the other skull in there. Oh yeah, bring it in close so y'all can see those French knots. They look terrible. Don't judge me. So yeah, so that's what I did. Still have a big chunk here to do. Oh, I did reach the bottom right here, so that's pretty cool. Found the bottom. At least I found it. But yeah, still just a lot left to do on this block here. I do love it though. I really enjoy it. I love that section of water, the bottom section of water. It's done in 924, which is what I stitched my Long Dog Opus 2 in. And it looks really blue here. On mine it looks green. On my Opus 2 it looks green. It just goes to show you, like, neighboring colors have an effect on what shade you see. I bet if these were in greens, this would look more green. Anyway, I love this. It's gorgeous. This will come back out next week sometime because I have another task or two to get done with it. So yeah, that's where I got to this time, and then I'll show you next week or the week after. Okay, confession time. The real reason I didn't want to stick with Halloween at Hawk Run Hollow much longer is that I remembered what was coming up next. And that is the Hope Sampler by Moira Blackburn. I love this piece. And seeing it now, I want to put it back on my frame right now. So I worked on this for a couple of tasks, but really, last Thursday was the 13-year anniversary of the tragedy at Virginia Tech, which is my alma mater. And I needed some peaceful stitching, and this provided. This was peaceful stitching. This is exactly what I needed that day. It was like the weirdest anniversary with everything going on. You know, none of the official events were taking place. There was a virtual 3.2 run in remembrance that I did not participate in. I wanted to, but I don't know. I never did. Yeah, it was a little different this year. But I always get emotional and I always start to feel things about this time of year. And so this was just really good. And it's beautiful. This is easily one of my top 3 favorite WIPs. Maybe I'll have a sit and think about what my top 3 favorite WIPs are. If this isn't first, then it's second, because I'm in love with this. This is on 32 count Belfast in Green Apple by Extra Design. She's on Etsy, and I've got her linked down below so that you can check her out. And I'll leave her here so that you can see. I'm doing this in the DMC's called for. The only exception to that is I subbed one of the greens, or excuse me, I added in Gloriana Sumatra just for something special, and then I'm going to add in another silk, not yet determined to do the verse. So when I worked on this, I was focusing on some of the motifs down here. So I finished this moth. I had the moth's body and then the paler part of his wings to do yet. So I finished him off, including his spots. Love that. So cool. Maybe a tattoo in the future. And then I did this little bird here. And then I started on the big bird. And I mean, I just love this. I love how weird the colors are. My stitches are pretty. Happy stitching makes for pretty stitches. I think that that's part of it. I think that my stitches look better when I'm stitching on something that I'm really enjoying. This is gorgeous. And it may have to come back out. It's the month of indulgences. It's the month where I always wee stitch what you want when you want. So this may come back out next week sometime, just for a little bit more love, because I love it and it makes me happy. Yeah. This is one of those pieces that when I finish it, it's going to be super bittersweet because I'll be so excited to have the finished piece, but also a little sad because it's over. So yeah, so that is my hope sampler. Okay, we're going to go a little bit out of order here, but it makes more sense to do it this way. So here is Glory of Autumn by Dimensions. Y'all are not expecting this. This is what I'm currently working on as of this morning. Month of Indulgences. I felt like working on this. Somebody that I follow on Instagram, and I don't remember who it is currently working on this and just recently shared their progress, and it made me want to pull mine out. I love fall. I love autumn. And I just felt like working on it. And it happens to meet a couple of prompts, so like double bonus there. So I decided to go ahead and pull this out. It works for a couple of prompts with various groups. It doesn't matter which one's on this form. And so I am stitching this on a 28 count cashel linen in antique white. It's not the kit fabric. I subbed out the kit fabric because first of all, I prefer linen, and second of all, the margins on the kit Ada were like a ½ inch, maybe 3/4. And that really doesn't work for my Millennium frame. So I subbed out the fabric. And so here's what I'm up to. I'm not going to input any before and afters this week. I'll do that next week, just because I've only done about 200 stitches so far. So it's not really worth it. But this is nonetheless where I'm at. I'm working on the building here. Water wheel housing. I keep wanting to call it a barn in my head. I don't know. Regardless, I'm working on the building this week. And so I started on filling in some holes on the roof. I had some spaces left open. And then I brought this roof lining down on the other page. This is a piece that I started in 2015, and suffice it to say, I stitch differently now. You can see in this section here, I've got a harsh page line there, and that was the case all the way up for a long time there. And yeah, that's just not how I operate anymore. It makes more sense to me to have both pages, especially at that page break. And since dimensions don't do overlaps, at least not this kit on the chart, yeah, it just would have made sense if I had worked on both pages at the same time. But anyway, I'm working towards that now. And yeah, I love this. Don't know what else to say. Oh, I forgot my own rule about stitching this with a larger needle. And then I was like, gosh, why is this going so terribly? Oh, that's right. So I managed to find a size 26 bowen, and that has made things go a little bit easier. So that's pretty good. So yeah, that's what I'm working on today and tomorrow. And I hope to get, I don't think it's going to happen now, but I was aiming for about 1,500 stitches. So we'll have to see how I can go about amending that. I may just have to omit some challenges or something. Anyway, I'm working on it and I'm loving it, and it's making me happy. And that's really all that matters in birthday month, isn't it? So I know the vast majority of you are expecting to see In This Moment on the frame, and so that's a little bit of a surprise because I was working on In This Moment as late as last night. So there's a couple of reasons why I took her off the frame, but let me go ahead and show you the progress that I've made. I worked on her a couple of times in the last week and a half or so. This is In This Moment, aka Mika McKenna, charted by Heaven and Earth Designs, artwork from Jeremiah Ketner. Gorgeousness. And I am working on page 36, which is the bottom, y'all. So cool, right? So cool. To finally reach the bottom on this piece, and I'm stitching in diagonals, so I should have, I found the bottom faster than I would have if I was stitching in rows. Anyway, so here she is in entirety, or about as much as I can fit in frame with leaning all the way back. And then I'm going to fold in close on the bottom here. With my park spreads hanging everywhere. So there we have it. That is a little over 75% of page 36. You can see that I have turned that corner. There's no threads being parked underneath because there's no stitches underneath there. So cool. I reached the right side of the page, and so it won't get any wider than that. So my diagonals are shrinking. I have just a little under 1,000 stitches left of the page. Super, super cool, right? So the reason that she's not on my frame right now is that these wave pages, for whatever reason, kill my drive on this piece. Kill it. I worked on this for the last 2 days. I managed a little over 1,600 stitches in those 2 days, and they were hard won. And this is easy. I mean, it's really pretty easy. It's not a ton of confetti. It's also not big blocks of color. It should be easy, but for whatever reason, I can't with this for very long before I'm like, okay, something else, please. I don't know if I'm the only one who does this. So because I stitch on so many different kinds of things, full coverage and samplers and prim and pretty ladies, I tend to, the FlossTube that I watch, the channels that I keep up with the most, I tend to space out so that I can work on the relevant. For instance, my full coverage queens, I'm usually watching you guys when I'm stitching on in this moment because it keeps me motivated on this. If I'm stitching on Hope Sampler, then I'm watching the sampler stitchers. Because what I found is that if I'm watching a full coverage stitcher while I'm stitching on a sampler, I want to be working on in this moment, and vice versa. So I don't know if I'm the only one who does that, but I do sort of tailor what I'm watching based on what I'm stitching. And so I just appreciate you full coverage stitchers because I needed you guys while I was working on this. Usually it's enough to keep me going, but these wave pages, I stall on them. So that's part of the reason why she's not in my frame right now. Taking a break to sort of recharge my momentum. I've got less than 1,000 stitches left, so I need some momentum to get there. The other reason that I am taking a break is that I think a page finish on my birthday would be really cool. And with only 1,000 stitches left, like, yeah, I could slow play it and finish the page on Saturday, but I've got other goals, so why not take a break? So here's where plans are going to work in, and this is why I'm talking about this project last, because we're going to talk about some plans. So this weekend is Full Coverage Fanatics Easter Egg Hunt Challenge, where you match your full coverage project to any of the 4 provided prompts. It's flowers, fluffy animals, something sweet, and colors to match the season that you're in when Easter hits. So if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, that would be autumn colors. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, that would be spring colors. So that challenge is happening this weekend. Also this weekend is the 24 Hours of Cross Stitch Marathon. So I would really like to work on In This Moment this weekend because it works for both of those. And also get that page finish on Saturday. I think that would be a lot of fun. So I'm going to start working on this again on Friday and set myself up for an early page finish on Saturday. So that'll be fun. And then it's time for my new start. So my birthday start this year is Quick Stitch Day and Night by Heaven and Earth Designs, artwork by Nadia Strelkina. Preview here of what it's going to look like finished in a long, long time. And so I'm going to start that on my birthday. So a page finish and then a new start all in my birthday. I'm here for it. So fabric here, ready to go, 25 count, easy count. So yeah, that is all ready to go. I'm working on getting my threads. I can make this project fit for the Easter Egg Hunt Challenge, no problem, but I would really like to get to my goal on In This Moment. That's a higher priority than spending 3 whole days on a new start. My original goal within this moment this month was 13,000 stitches roughly to get through pages 30, 36, and 7 to finish up those 2 partial pages as well as the page that I hadn't quite yet finished at the beginning of the month. And that's not going to happen. I have to do like 1,000 stitches every day for the rest of the month to be able to accomplish that, and that's just not going to happen. So I've had to reduce my goal down to my WIP goal of 10,000 stitches this month. But in order to do that, I need another 3,500 stitches, and so I can't spend the entire weekend on Quick Stitch Day and Night. It just doesn't make any sense to do that. So I will get it started on Saturday, and I'll work on it all day on Sunday, and I'm really excited for my new start. I'm so excited for anybody who's going to play along with the Shortest Birthday Sal. Just as a quick reminder, it's anything that might be time related. And to be totally honest, like, y'all could do anything. If it was a stitch along that was released in parts over the span of X amount of days, weeks, months, years, whatever, you could do that. I'm totally open-ended on the birthday sale if you want to play along. So that kind of concludes what my plans are for the weekend. As far as next week is concerned, with it being the month of indulgences, I'll decide that next week. I just listed off a few things that I need to get done. I need some more stitches on in this moment. I'd like to work on Halloween at Hawk Run Hollow and Hope Sampler again next week. And then next Friday is May. Yeah. So I've got to get these goals accomplished. But really, the ultimate goal for me this month is just to enjoy my stitching, to just enjoy it as much as I can. So that is going to finish us up with the plans and therefore the stitchy portion of this program. I know I said I was going to talk about books today, but I think I'm actually going to end this off here. I'm starting to get a headache. It's a little late in the day and I'm starting to get a headache. So I think I'm just going to end it off here. I will talk about books in my next update, which I hope to film next week. Speaking of next week, you can expect an update. I would like to vlog this weekend for the 24 Hours of Cross Stitch Marathon. And I also need to do my finalized Stitch Mania 2020 plans. So you'll be able to see that next week. Hopefully I can get all of that filmed. So I am going to head off here. Thank you all so very much for watching. Thank you for your continued support of me and my channel. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope that you're stitching. As always, be kind. See y'all next time.